Hey folks, got another clean water systems instructional video for you today. Today we're going to go ahead and take a look at replacing our main drive gear inside the 5900 series filter valve. This is a Signature 1 valve. It's one of the older valves, so if you've purchased your valve in 2015, 2016 time frame, this is probably the valve you'll have. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So you should be able to perform this with your tank in place. I'm going to go ahead and spin the tank around just for the ease of photography, but you should have enough space to perform this with your tank in place. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and put your valve. Again, this is a Sig 1 valve, the orange handled valves. We're going to go ahead and push those facing each other. So what that's going to do now is your inlet water is coming in and going out. You're bypassing the valve. We're going to go ahead now and unplug the unit. And I'm going to go ahead and spin. What we're going to do is remove the control head from the valve body. First thing we need to do is remove this back plate. There are two screws up underneath here. So we're going to remove those, located here and here. Go ahead, remove this back cover. And I'm just going to go ahead and put the screws in here. I'm going to use this back cover for my screw. I'm going to go ahead and pull out the battery now. And we're going to remove this screw right here that holds the piston assembly. We're now going to remove these three screws, one located here, here, and here. That basically holds the front cover on. Okay, now on this side of the valve, the last two screws to remove are these two that hold the control head actually down to the valve body. Okay, we'll now be able to take and pull this valve body off just like this, and we'll go ahead and go to the bench now. Okay, now that we have the head off of the valve, we're going to go ahead and separate this front piece here. So you got to watch out for some cables. This power cord comes through here. You're going to want to feed the battery lead here up through and out through the top here. Okay, this is important here. This is the encoder right here that reads the wheel as it turns. There's a little spring right here. You want to go ahead and pull that whole encoder thing out. That little guy looks like that. So now if you come inside the valve, you're going to have this cable here to the far left. You're going to want to go ahead and remove that. And then there's a cable that runs from the valve up inside. If you can get that around here. Let's see if I can get that around here to see it. Okay, it comes up through here and this connector here. So you're going to go ahead and unconnect this, feed that through the hole there, back through the second hole, and now your two parts are completely separated. So this is your cover plate. Just go ahead and set that to the side. And here we have the two plates here. They have these little clips. Let me see if I can get a close-up here of that. See these little clips? So you need to depress those. Depending on your valve vintage, you may also have screws, 2 or 4 screws here. So make sure you don't have those screws. And what you want to do now is just go ahead and pinch these so the valve will work its way out. And then go ahead, this cable will feed through this hole. This exposes your valve now. So the other side of this is this right here. So you can just go ahead and pull this out, slide it straight out. Now, just to be aware, on the Signature 1 valves, this encoder wheel here has a longer shaft. The one that you're going to get now for a replacement is a shorter shaft, and basically all that is just design changes through the years. So you're starting with this and you're going to put this one back in. This is the style that they use now. So normally if these break off or the gears strip, we usually have you go ahead and at least inspect your encoder wheel. A lot of times you'll see this and it'll look like kind of a warped record or a warped disc. So we normally recommend you go ahead and put a new encoder wheel on as well. Okay, so reassembly is just the reverse. Now what you're going to do is you go ahead and slide this in here now. You don't need to worry about keying it. You can see where it meets up to the wheel right here. We'll go ahead and adjust this in where it needs to be later. Because what you'll need to do is line that back up with your piston. Okay. Okay, so you have the new encoder pushed down here. Again, this encoder is keyed onto this guy, so it'll only go one way. Go ahead and make sure that's down. Go ahead and get this guy put back in. And then you're just going to go ahead and snap this back into place. Make sure you hear them all click down. And again, it's just these little clips here you can see. So now this is back down. Put your screws back in here if there were any installed. Like I said, the manufacturer changed the assembly on these a little bit through the years, so there's some variations there. So now we're going to go ahead and reinstall the front cover. So again, you'll need to route your battery cable down through the little battery slot there. At this point, you can also grab and reinstall your encoder on the encoder wheel. Again, let me see if I can get around here and give you a view of what that'll look like. So you can see the encoder wheel right here. And that encoder, the little bracket just snaps back in there. There, you can see how that snaps down in there like that. That's on. Okay, we're going to go ahead and run this back up through. Through here, back around through this hole. And this just takes a little time. It's don't be intimidated by it. It just takes a little bit. They didn't leave you a lot of room here, so. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and plug our auxiliary cable back up in here where it came from, and do pay attention to where these come apart from. Okay, snap him back up in there. Okay, so everything's good. Make sure that battery cable gets back over here. And back out the front. And then again, what you want to do is you kind of want to make sure your little power cable here on the side gets back into its little slot correctly. So that's what it should look like there. Cable's back in, that's good. Okay. So at this point we're going to go ahead, we're going to reinstall our 3 screws. One here, and one here. Okay, we've got our 3 screws back in place. So now we're going to go ahead and go over to the valve and reinstall this back on the valve. So recall when we were installing the gear here, I said you could line it up anywhere, but you do need to have this lined up here with your piston now. So as you go to slide it up, see, I actually lucked out here, but what you want to do is move that piston manually up or down. You can pull it up, or you can drive it back down. So your valve body then slips back down in. So what you want to be able to do is get the valve body back. And also it's important to notice here on this valve, or on this piston, there's a thin side and a thick side. Make sure your thin side's over here where it needs to be. And as you can see, I need to push that down just a little bit. Okay, so it looks like my 2 holes are lined up now. This is lined up, so we'll go ahead and install our 2 screws that mount the control head to the valve. Okay, so we've got our 2 screws mounted here, so now we're going to go ahead and mount our piston screw. This is the smaller one with the large area washer. So we've got our piston screw in. I'm now going to go ahead and install a new battery. So we've got our new battery installed. All of our hardware is tight. We're going to go ahead and reinstall the back plate. Again, there's the 2 screws that go down into the bottom here. And we'll just put those in and put the screws back in. Okay, so before we plug it back in, we want to make sure, remember this is still in bypass mode. So you want to make sure, verify that you're still in bypass mode. So when we go ahead and plug this back in, this valve is going to cycle and try to find home. It's going to go back to its service position. That was why it's important to make sure your bypass is still in. Once you've plugged it back in, we'll go ahead and open your inlet and outlet valves. Come out of the bypass mode. Verify and make sure you don't have any leaks. You shouldn't, because you haven't broke into the wet system, but you never know. So now that you brought your inlet and outlet valve open, you also should be able to go, once it finds home, you should be able to go into the house, turn on a tap or a downstream faucet, and you should have flow going through it. So now what we're going to do is just go ahead and manually run it through a recycle. We'll go ahead and do a backwash and a rapid rinse. If you have an air valve, you can bypass through that. It's basically steps 2 and 4. So what we're going to do is hold that set change button. We're going to hold it, and then you'll see it go down to 1 day here, right here. Hold it again. And in this particular case, this is an air valve, so that goes into air release. So once that goes into its cycle and stops, you can hear it rotating. We'll go ahead and push it one more time and advance it to the backwash. So right now you should see rinse water coming back out your drain, into your drain, doing your backwash. So go ahead and let that count down from the 10 minutes. And then we'll go ahead and advance it to the next step, which is 4, which is your rapid rinse. Okay, once we're into 4, we'll go ahead and let that count down, let that do the rapid rinse, flushing the water back through, down through the media, do a nice rinse through, and we'll go ahead and advance it then to the 0. Which is your service mode. Once it gets back into the service mode, then you'll see it go back and forth between the time of day and the days left for regeneration. So you're now in service mode. So you should be good to go at this point. Thanks for watching.